some adjustments. These things get stuck. And so I spent like 15 minutes.
Oh.
I had to get like a vice grip. Did a little spring cleaning, if you will. For season 2.
That's what we're on?
Yeah, I'm making it official. This is season 2. So welcome,
Okay.
Dr.
Another
Steve.
seasons of therapy.
Yeah, well, that's not something you would know. That's something we in the profession use.
Yeah, in the podcast world.
I was going to say in the therapy world, but I
Yeah.
was going to make a joke, but you know that I'm a therapist, but I'm not. You are.
You've probably gone to enough therapy.
Yeah,
you
I get
probably
a
test out of it.
What do they give you? A
Honorary.
honorary degree. Yeah.
Yeah.
So welcome to season 2 of My Therapist and I. And as you can see, a lot of changes. Night and day. No, but I was thinking we could talk about... I have been thinking about this podcast. I think we talked about it last session, a little bit at the tail end.
Mm-hmm.
And when you left, I'm sure this wasn't intentional, but I saw part of me was like, I wonder if he's going to come back.
Really?
I got a little bit of the feeling that you're like, so what's the deal with this? Are we going to keep going? And I was like, oh, okay. Was that not intentional?
Well, I'm here.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Season 2.
Season 2. Yeah, you showed up.
No, but I ask that question often.
Okay.
Because I think when we started this journey, I think I told you, I said, I don't think I'm the guy you want on this
Long-term.
podcast because I'm not a long-term, I don't do a lot of long-term therapy stuff.
Yeah. I remember saying that.
And so I often ask my clients, so where are we at then? How are we doing? And is this working for you? And
Yeah. I read into it a little bit. I was like, but anyway, I just started thinking about the format and I was like, what's a way in which as this continues, it's, your schedule is going to get busier and busier, already is busy, but it's like, what's a way I can sort of rely on you less, I guess, so to speak.
Mhm.
And I started thinking like, it would be cool for me to start reaching out to other people in the mental health community and ask like other patients
Yeah.
and talking to them about their experience if they're open to it
Oh,
with therapy,
yeah.
more like patient focused sort of, because it would be
Yeah.
cool to talk to other patients. There's this like very interesting community on Instagram where there's a bunch of accounts that really just post well-designed infographics and like quotes and facts about mental health and encouragement.
Yeah.
And they're just like really artistically, or I don't know the right adjective there. They're very well designed. And
Aesthetically.
aesthetically pleasing. They're cool to look at. And a lot of them are sort of in I don't know how you would describe the animation type, but they kind of feel like Pixar-y, or, it's cool stuff to look at. And they're all just run by people. Some people create clothing that's mental health focused.
Yeah.
They have really sweet design, like sweatshirts
Really?
with, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mental health clothing. Okay.
It's a very fascinating community. And I was thinking about just like reaching out to some of those people and seeing if they'd want to talk about, their interest in mental health, but also whether or not they see a therapist and what their experience is like, and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
And I was also thinking,
Our therapist and us.
yeah, well, also too, like, I don't know if there's a world where this happens, but maybe we, like, you and I can meet and then we can call people too, because that's a thing I can do here.
Oh,
But I don't know how that would work in terms of like therapist, patient, other person. It might be kind of complicated.
Yeah, the threesome.
Yeah. I don't think I don't think you're allowed to. Yeah.
Mental health menage.
Yeah. It feels so uncomfortable when you say it out loud. The mental health menage. Yeah. So I've been thinking about that, and I haven't gone much further with it, but it's my head started kind of turning. The wheels started turning after you left last session, because I was like, yeah, what is the future of this podcast? And,
Yeah. I mean, I started thinking, okay, I'll do 8 episodes. Or
Yeah, which is great.
because we started sometime in November, something like that, right?
Wow,
November,
was it?
December? I think so. I thought I'd do 8 episodes.
Mm-hmm. Why? How'd
See
you
where that
land on
goes.
that number 8?
I don't know. There's some research out there that shows that family therapy is typically, family and couple therapy, typically shorter term than individual therapy. So 7 to 10 sessions. So I picked somewhere kind of in the middle of that.
Fascinating.
And I think it's interesting that that we have not been talking much about dissociation. And I don't know if that's because I give off the vibe like I don't want to talk about it, or if it's not, or if you're coming to a different kind of a place with it in your life. I know that there are, we talked a while ago about your dad, and got a text that I shared with you from a colleague who has been listening to the podcast, and he was,
that was cool.
Not congratulating, but just acknowledging your courage in addressing some of those things and with your family. And so, but I've always thought that that there's restrictions on how much you can be open.
Oh, 1,000,000%.
In here, in this space, unlike real therapy.
Yep. That will consistently be a thing.
Yeah, so that made me wonder. So does Alex hold back on talking about dissociation, or is it not much of a thing anymore? Or
to answer that specific question, it's twofold. The first of which is, so I had been I was getting ready to receive EMDR therapy, and I was seeing someone, they had surgery, and so they were like, I'm not going to be in the office. They haven't been in the office for like a month and a half. So I just haven't
done it,
talked about it in a month and a half, but we're going to be starting up in a week, not next week, but the week after, more or less. So that there's part of that, but also too, I just it hasn't been front of mind. I think, and that's one thing I wanted to talk about as I reflect personally on season 1. I think my biggest takeaway.
I love the way it's like, this is season 1.
Season 1. Yeah, well, it's a really big deal. Really big podcast, huge following, and it's good to just keep it structured. And a big thing for me that I've learned from our work together, probably the only valuable thing I've taken from this experience, is this idea of mastery versus acceptance. And I think that applies a little bit to my experience with dissociation, because as I think about it right now, you bring it up, I'm thinking about it, I'm like, okay, do I feel like I'm here? And I'm like, not really. I still have that feeling of dissociation, but it doesn't bother me right now. And I have been, in between our sessions, I have been thinking a lot about this idea of mastery versus acceptance, because I think it is something that I have always struggled with. And it's funny because the more I think about it, the more I see it sort of in other people. I can sort of be like, oh, I hear what you're saying, and I can relate to that, because it's really just, it feels like you just want to be in control and fix. And I think about my family structure, and it's been very fascinating and helpful, but I think I've been able to achieve a bit more acceptance, particularly with dissociation. So that's kind of why I haven't been talking about it. And I don't know if that's just because I'm in I'm very busy, there's a lot going on, and maybe that's a much needed distraction. It's so funny. Like, there's something to be said. I think about this a lot. There's something to be said about being so busy you just can't think about stuff. You just don't have time to vicissitude, or
So this whole mastery versus acceptance, I'm sure that plays out in multiple different areas. It was, our conversation was related to this thing called ambiguous loss. And when you have losses, you have grief. And so I think one of the biggest things people need when they're grieving is a place to escape the grief. You need to go to a movie. You need to go for a run. You need to be able to you can't be consumed with the fact that this person died or that this loss has been experienced. People can wallow in that and stay in that forever, but every now and then you need a distraction. You need to be able to go make dinner. You need to, do something different and realize that, and that's part of grieving, is realizing that you will get over the loss. You will move on. You will move from this state of hurt.
Our discussion on ambiguous loss was, I think, very helpful in that regard, because while it's probably used to describe relatively speaking, much more traumatic loss than, I mean, not to make comparison.
It can, but it doesn't have to be. Right?
But I could still relate to that principle of like, okay, I've been sort of desperately seeking closure, right? Trying to find an answer, the answer, quote unquote.
On dissociation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Where potentially there is room for me to just say, hey, what if this is exactly where you're supposed to be and how you're supposed to be, and what if everything's still fine? And
yeah, very zen.
Yeah. And the work we've done alongside the work I've done with George, talking about it, I talk about our sessions with him and
therapy about therapy.
Yeah. Man, the amount of therapy that I do, there's something to unpack there in of itself. But
well, probably.
he made that. George made this analogy of like, well, if you sprain your ankle and you're just focused on your ankle, it's gonna be all consuming. Versus if you sprain your ankle and I'm gonna go about the rest of my day.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's there, but you learn, life goes on.
Mm-hmm.
And
yep.
It's that idea is something that I continue to work with, but that to me is sort of, it's been very helpful in terms of, I apply it to anything, like in work, in relationships. Like if things aren't going the way I think they should be going, or if things aren't going the way I want them to be going, I take that personally. I assume it's my fault. I'm not working hard enough. Something's wrong. Whereas like, first of all, who's to say it's wrong to begin with? So I'm just trying to lean more into acceptance than mastery. But I will say, mastery is really easy to get sucked into.
Well, we live in a culture of mastery. I mean, you get paid more if you master something. People get master's degrees. They don't get acceptance degrees, right? It's interesting because you get accepted into graduate school so you can get a master's degree. So, but yeah, that acceptance is probably a thing that a lot of people need to work on. and mastery, shoot for it, but don't kill yourself if you don't get it.
Yeah, I think that's the balance. There's something to be said about, the more I think about it, I see more corollaries between I haven't used that word in so long, between other aspects of my life. And I definitely think, like most humans, I sometimes find myself wanting to control more than I can. Or it's hard for me to admit that there is a ton outside of my control. Mm-hmm. And I was raised in an environment, I think going back to my family, my dad is very much this way, where it's like, no, if you think hard enough and you plan hard enough, you can control everything. So I think that was sort of ingrained in me as a kid. Like if something's outside of your control, it is because you did not do your homework, you did not prepare. Mm-hmm. Whereas like, no, there's a lot in life that just, it's sort of the odd beauty of it.
That I think that's such a Western mentality. You don't find that as much in some Eastern cultures. Mm-hmm. The idea of mastering something, and there's much more respect for fate and more respect for other powers beyond your own that are bigger than you.
Yeah,
and a humility around that.
And it's interesting. I mean, not to get even more vicissitude, but I think, for me personally, why I am susceptible to that kind of thinking, or I have a pattern, a history of it, is just because in some instances, this pursuit of mastery has served me well.
Yeah.
So I think you just sort of start to default to it, but it can be a nasty road to go down because it's like you just assume everything. If you assume everything's in your control and there are things maybe that cause discomfort and you can't fix them, you assume it's because you have some sort of deficiency or something. And it's really easy to get down on yourself.
I didn't do it right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I should have accounted for that.
Why is this so hard for me? I'm stupid. I'm not, this is easy for everyone else. Like, I know, I feel like sometimes I talk about stuff, and I'm not saying this is how you respond, but I sometimes think you get the impression that what I'm talking about is like, yeah, that's what you're describing is being a human. Like everyone experiences that. And in my mind, the things I struggle with are so unique to me. I assume I'm the only one, and it's because I'm not good enough, or I'm like, naive, or it's fascinating.
And so what would it mean to you if these are things that are just human struggles, not Alex struggles? What does that mean to you?
It means that I've wasted a lot of money on therapy. No, I mean,
and in that way, you get the most bang for your buck here because I'm not getting paid at all.
Yeah,
we're still looking for a sponsor.
We had Dave for
Season
week.
1.
Yeah, that is another revelation. It's come more forefront in my conversations with George in the last couple of months.
Yeah,
but this idea of the more that I am reminded that, like, hey, other people are feeling what you're feeling, the more perspective it lends in terms of it's easier for me to arrive at acceptance. Like, oh, it's hard though to let go and to accept. It almost feels like I'm almost a little afraid because there's a little bit of embarrassment. Like you mean to tell me I've gone 35 years of taking this personally when really what I'm experiencing is human, being a human
condition.
Yeah. And I've been so tripped up by it when really it's like, there's a little bit of embarrassment, I guess I feel. Yeah. It's like, I can imagine an alien coming down and be like, you silly little human. You're just like, when I look at a dog and it's being a dog, I'm not like, look at that dumb animal. It's doing, it's like, no, it's just being a dog. It's barking at stuff. It's sniffing butts. It's just, and it's harder for me to look at myself as a human doing, know.
I think if you can really embrace that, so healthy.
Really hard.
So healthy just to be like, what if I'm just a dog? What if I'm just a human and I'm doing human things and there's no real deep answer?
It can be scary for me because then I wonder, like, what am I? It's almost like my brain loves trying to figure stuff out.
Something to master.
Yeah. It's like,
see, and I think there's a real strong likelihood that your endeavor with therapy is about mastering life.
I'm not gonna deny that. I mean, there's I know for a fact I have said in sessions, I feel like there's stuff wrong with me and I got to fix it. That's the, more or less verbatim, which, there's something
wrong with me. That's the part that I get tripped up on. There's something wrong with me that I need to fix versus I'm realizing I have differences. I'm realizing I'm a different kind of a cut than other people. And I wonder what that means. What does that mean for me? I think human beings are meaning-making entities, right? We try to make meaning out of things. Why did you do this? Why did we do that? We're asking these questions all the time. And so to me, you going to therapy is it about mastery or is it about curiosity?
It's probably both.
Like if I could get the answer, would I change the things so I could be right, so I could be a master, so I could have the situation nailed down? I think you have a desire to nail down the situation and know it instead of accept it.
That is true. I think
like your first inclination is to master instead of
I am made to. I feel anxious about things. I have this anxiety that when it comes back to, are you checking time? Are we low on time here?
Checking heart rate.
This is such a stimulating conversation.
It's higher than I thought it would be.
Season 2 off to a record start in Dr. Steve's heart rate history. I think what causes me or what compels me to understand is I just want to know that, like, I'm doing it okay. Like, everything's okay. And sometimes I feel like I have deficiencies, right? Because I feel a certain way or, because I'm focused on a certain thing. It ties back to this worry that that's an Alex thing. And I'm like, okay, well, let's, if this is causing you to feel discomfort, let's fix it. There's a reason. Let's find out why it's causing you discomfort. And then let's figure out a plan to become more comfortable with the discomfort, which like in of itself is a great irony. You know?
Right.
So long story short, I think there's a bit of, I feel a bit of fear with sadness, and I'm afraid of sadness, and I'm afraid of feeling alone, and I'm afraid of feeling disappointed, right? I sort of have conditioned myself to think I should always be happy and I should always be positive, and I should, because then I can achieve more. It's hard to achieve when you feel down and you feel tired and you feel depressed. And so I'm like, all right, let's hack my brain and my emotions so I can achieve more and be a better human, stuff like that.
But even that language of let's hack my brain, like, right? I mean, my kids, when they play games, they talk about like gaming, they talk about cheat codes, you know, like, hey, there's this cheat code. And so it looks like you're looking for a cheat code. Am I going to hack my brain, or, you know, go around or do something instead of going through like the sadness, the hurt, the emotional experiences of life, the joys, you know, the ups and the downs.
Totally. And again, it sort of ties, at the root of it, I find discomfort to be uncomfortable, and I
find discomfort to be uncomfortable.
And
it's the very definition.
Yeah, I know. And that's why
tell me something. What is Alex without therapy? What is Alex like without the years of therapy? Who are you? What would you be like?
I think I would be Alex without therapy is an Alex that is afraid to be real Alex, and is just very scared and walled off.
Okay. Is Alex with therapy a different person?
I think so.
You're less scared, less walled off?
Yeah. Because even now...
Are you engaged without therapy? Are you engaged to Haley without therapy?
That's a great question, because there's a world in which, I think the societal pressure would have just forced me into a relationship of some kind. I'm not with Haley specifically without therapy. I firmly believe that. With, obviously there's no way of proving it, but I think therapy has allowed me to feel more comfortable with my authentic self. I love that term. And even this conversation we're having now, I mean, I'm acknowledging that it exists in my head, and I'm acknowledging that I sometimes feel ashamed of this process. Without therapy, I'm just thinking about that, and I'm never speaking that out loud to anyone.
Oh.
It's never seeing the light of day, and I'm just internalizing everything. And I think back to Alex pre-therapy when I first went to college, and I spent so much time just obsessing over things and never sharing them with anyone because I was so afraid of them.
Afraid of what people would think about
Correct.
you. Yeah.
Yeah. And just assuming, Alex, this is weird. No one's going to relate. You're crazy. If anyone finds out about this, you'll be a loser. You won't have any friends.
Laughing stock.
Yeah. And that's why, I was so focused on being accepted and being cool. Like in the hierarchy of priorities for pre-therapy Alex, being accepted and being cool was number one. That's all I thought about. And in pursuit of that, I developed a lot of really just not healthy habits. And I just remember being so closed up and so tightly wound. And therapy allowed me to open up a lot of that stuff. Granted, you sort of go down the rabbit hole, an Alice in Wonderland kind of thing. But I'm curious. Are you asking that question because you wonder, like, maybe therapy was not a good thing for me?
No, I asked because I think I've said earlier on in our time together, I think I've said I'm not convinced everybody needs to go to therapy as long as
Yeah.
people can have therapeutic moments. And so some people get therapeutic moments in a variety of places, and some people get them
Totally.
in therapy. And we started this podcast. You started this because you said therapy has served me well, and I would like to get the message out more about mental health.
Yeah.
And put myself out there as an example.
Yeah.
But you may be transitioning at a point in your life where therapy takes less of a prominent role, and you challenge yourself for more therapeutic moments.
Yes.
And I think you find those things in relationships with people.
Agreed.
So, like in the span of my time knowing you, you got real about a part of your history that you don't like talking about, your alcohol use back in the day, and this your run-in with the law on that.
Yeah.
You talked about very early on. You talked about the fantasy football guys weekend.
Yep.
And the remorse that you have, and other people in that group have, but nobody talks about it. So you were an entree. And I'm fascinated to see what happens this fantasy football draft.
Yeah.
You guys already have it planned, right?
We've been talking about it, and
Are you not invited this year?
I was invited. Transparently, it's also like right around when I get married. So I was like, hey guys, there's a good chance I don't make it just because I'm really busy with wedding showers and stuff like that.
It's interesting to me because I think my guess is most of those people have heard you talk about the remorse that you felt around, here's what we do. We get together, we have this surface area, we drink a lot, and then we feel bad and we regret. I mean, it doesn't have to be that way. And,
No,
I
agree.
think you had some people kind of reach out to you and go, yeah, thank you for talking about it, right? There were some people who...
Yeah, there were people. I mean, nobody reached out and was like, I listened to the podcast. Thanks for saying something. It was more so like, hey, a couple guys were like, hey, I think we agree the last trip wasn't the best.
Yeah.
We don't want to necessarily repeat that.
Yeah.
We don't want that to be the norm.
But my point in bringing this up is that you took a risk to change the script on that and talk about it publicly. That was a vulnerable, risky thing to do.
Yeah. Yep.
And to me, that opens you up for potential ridicule, but it also opens you up for potential therapeutic moment with people.
Yes. And I definitely, that's a goal of mine, is to create a community or create more relationships where I can have therapeutic moments.
Yeah.
And a part of me wonders if that's the process of becoming an adult, right? Because I think back to growing up, a lot of my friendships, no.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, it can be, but I don't think that typifies everybody's adult experience. I think a lot of people get stuck. A lot of people don't say what they think and feel because they're worried about ridicule or sounding weird, and they hold back. And
I definitely have revisited I look at my friendships and relationships with a new lens now, right? For that very reason. Can I have therapeutic moments with
this person?
And it has less to do with, how cool they are,
Yeah.
and more to do with like, how do they treat people? Are they kind? Are they thoughtful? Do they listen? And that has been interesting for me.
Yeah.
And I agree. I think when I was younger, I felt sort of not trapped, but I didn't have an outlet for therapeutic moments. I didn't have anyone I felt safe talking to. I was like, okay, well, I've heard of this profession. These people are legally obligated to be, or whatever it is. So I'll go talk to one of these people. And I think being vulnerable and sharing my thoughts, it was something I needed to practice in a safe space.
Yeah.
And that's what therapy did. It's like, to make the analogy to the gym, it's like I needed to strengthen that muscle in a place where someone could support me and make sure I was, I wasn't jeopardized, I was doing it in a safe way.
Yeah.
And then I was able to take that out into real life. Also along the way, I sort of got hooked on this idea of like thinking about stuff and analyzing, and
I think that's the mastery piece.
yeah. Cause like
you you were like, oh my gosh, therapy has helped me master some things. Maybe you can
Yeah, 100%.
help me master other things.
And I think I said this in one of the earlier sessions, but I became so gung-ho on therapy because I started diving into everything, work-related issues with colleagues and with projects, and how can I be more productive? And it just sort of was just like pretty soon I was digging in everything, and I saw results, right? I could have, if I was having it, if there was something I wanted to say to someone,
Yeah.
I could practice with my therapist and then confront it in real life, which would further progress the journey and have real results. So it was like this sort of slippery slope.
I wish more people would use therapy that way, that they would practice it with their therapist. They would see it as a proving ground or as an experimental field of some kind, and then say, okay, now I need to go out and do this out there.
Yeah.
And that's what I do with my couples is now go out and do that.
Yeah.
You guys have talked in here. Now you gotta make this happen at home.
And one application there is like, I talked about wanting to have conversations with my parents about how I was raised.
Yeah.
And I still am very, kind of intimidated by that process. But talking about it with you, talking about it with George, I'm confident that I will get there because, I know I'll feel comfortable as comfortable as I can. It'll still be scary, but.
Yeah, I don't know that comfort is always the best goal, right?
Totally.
So sometimes it's like I have to deal with the uncomfortable conversation.
Yep.
And there's growth in that. We call it a comfort zone for a reason, right? Break out of our comfort zones is what Tony Robbins and his buddies would say.
Not a Tony Robbins fan.
Yeah. I just put his name out there as a motivational speaker.
Yep. We are not affiliated with Tony Robbins in any way. We do not necessarily condone. I don't know enough about him, actually.
I can't think of the name of the SNL character, Matt Foley. There, who I'm thinking about. Matt Foley, the motivational speaker.
Down by the river in a van. Yeah. Down by the river. Yep. Yeah, and it makes you wonder, did Chris Farley have a therapist? Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But yeah, I believe there is something to be said about like, okay, you've practiced, you can't practice forever. You got to go out. At some point, you got to go out into the world and take the risk.
Get on the field.
Yeah. Yep. And I will say that as I've gotten older and as my life as I've planted roots and stuff, I feel as though I can achieve more therapeutic moments outside of therapy. Having Haley is very helpful in that regard.
Yeah, totally.
Having a partner,
Yep. Because somebody like that, an intimate, committed partner is somebody that represents maybe a place of greater safety where you can experiment more, you can lead out, you can test the limits of how much you can disclose about yourself and how much does this person really want to know me. How much can I let this person see of me? Which
that is something, Haley and I have worked on that very thing because there have been times where I've been like, I'm afraid to open up my brain in front of you because I'm afraid it's just going to overwhelm you or you're going to think it's weird. And, we've talked about that very thing. It can be hard. It is very hard to be vulnerable in front of other people because, me personally, I'm always very focused on how they respond. Mm-hmm. Like I read someone very, not astutely, but I'm very focused on their reaction. You probably get that, I tell you how I explain something and I got an impression from you.
Yep.
I'm very sensitive to how other people receive
and perceive you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And I'm working on that. Acceptance I think ties into that too.
Yeah.
Side note, I got a filling replaced like 2.5 weeks ago. My God, my teeth hurt. Oh man. I went in and they were like, yeah, no, okay. It's just your bite. We'll make an adjustment. Didn't fix anything. It sucks.
You get back in?
I'm going to go back in on Monday. Yeah. Be like, guys, what's the deal? I keep thinking about, do you see the movie Castaway with Tom Hanks?
I have seen it.
Do you remember he had like a toothache and he had to...
Did you have skates here somewhere?
Yeah, I do. It makes you appreciate how, like, if not having access to dental care would have sucked so bad. Because the pain is like a very specific, almost debilitating pain. Just for something so tiny, a little tooth. Thank God for dentists.
Yeah.
Would have not done well in the 1600s.
Dentist and I could be a new
That would be a boring podcast.
podcast.
No offense to dentists everywhere, to all the dentists listening. I think a lot of them will be like, yeah, we're not the most, we're not podcast people. Yeah, so
I think we wrap up here.
that is very fair. It's about that time.
Yeah.
So thank you for kicking off season 2 with me, Dr. Steve.
You bet. I've got a question for season 2, episode 2.
Ooh, I'm excited. All right, everyone. Per usual, stay happy.
Take care.
Bye.